Welcome to episode 96 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I have 95.
That is incorrect.
Well, you could have fixed it. You could have fixed it. All you had to do was punch a 6 in. It was not so much work. Okay. I'm James Whittingham. This week, Hyundai says goodbye to the combustion engine. Hyundai says goodbye to hydrogen fuel cells. A YouTuber shows how electric airlines will happen much sooner than you think. And if that's not enough, we've got a whole bunch more in this amazing edition of the Clean Energy Show. Brian, I'm concerned because the script indicates one note on your end that you have a long chit-chat. So that makes me worry.
Yes, well,
I always go to negative when something like that happens. Has something bad happened?
No, I have a shocking announcement for you, James.
Uh-oh.
So I think we should do your boring chit-chat first, and then we'll get to my shocking announcement.
What if there's no time left? Will the viewers be able to hang on? Look, listeners, you better not skip over my chit-chat. Okay? This is my week in review right now. And whatever Brian has is not as important as what I have, I think. Anyway, it has been incredibly cold here, Mr. Stockton. In fact, it's been
ridiculous.
Not even above minus 30 some days. And it's crazy. Today is sunny. It's in the afternoon, and my window is open because it was too hot in my bedroom to podcast. And
because you have this fantastic passive solar house.
Well, just the fact that I've got a big ass window here shining this light in on the one of the shortest days of the year, and it's warm in here, so I'm breathing fresh air, and it is surreal after being housebound for literally a couple of weeks based on the weather. But anyway, I've had some problems with my car, my Nissan Leaf, in that it keeps, I mentioned this before, it keeps going to 100%. So in order to heat the battery, it's plugged into the thing and it charges up to, you can't tell it not to charge. You can tell a Tesla not to charge. But you can tell it to charge to only 80%, and you can tell it not to do it until this time of day, but you can't delay it for more than 24 hours. So it gets to 80%, and then it's heating the battery to keep it at an operational temperature. And keeping in mind it's minus 35 degrees Celsius outside, which is similar in Fahrenheit. And it's got to heat that sucker so it's at least minus 17 or warmer so that it will function. And in order to do that on my car, for some reason, it charges the battery till it gets to 100% and beyond, even beyond, to the actual capacity that the headroom it's supposed to leave behind. So I didn't want to, since I wasn't going anywhere, I'm not a crazy man, I didn't know what to do with my car. So I had to unplug it and let it just go out. I actually ran it and drove it around a block a couple times, which is a pain in the butt. But I left it for 24 hours in the minus 30s and was kind of worried about that, because if it didn't work out, if I woke up in the morning and the battery was frozen, I'd be hooped until it warmed up. Or I'd have to tow it to a garage like some people have to do. But it only used 30% of my battery.
Oh, that's not bad.
In 24 hours. So, and I've got a small battery. And keep in mind, I think I was using my Leaf Spy, which is an app you can use on the Nissan Leaf. Many cars have them, where you can get into the data of the computer through a Bluetooth dongle that goes onto where you plug in, where the mechanics plug in their computers on the car. I plug in a little dongle, leave it plugged in. It's USB, or pardon me, it's Bluetooth. So I actually read it from inside the house too, to see what the battery was doing, so it wouldn't have to go outside, which is interesting as well. First time I've done that. But yeah, and there was only about half the battery usable from degradation and from cold temperatures. So I had about 30% of that used just to heat the battery. Now, modern cars, I keep telling people, lots of battery, you can do that. I mean, I could do it for 3 days. Other people could do it for 10 days. It's not a big deal.
And so did you just leave it to its own devices, or did you have to leave like the car heater on or anything like that? 30%, it just did that automatically?
Just left it, and it automatically heats it. It will indicate on the dash through one of 3 blue lights, depending on what they do. It tells you that the battery heater has come on. So it did come on, and and my tire pressure gauge, was going off, and I had to put air in my tires because Apparently molecules don't like to bounce around in -30. But I have seen some other people having owners problems on our Facebook pages, especially with the Teslas.
Yeah, the newer Teslas that have the heat pump heaters, it sounds like they've been having quite a few issues with those in our this extreme cold snap.
That is not a good thing, Brian. I don't like to hear that because those stories get around and they assume that this new thing does not work, when in fact it's Tesla just having a flub and having to fix something over the air or perhaps mechanical. It could be a sensor that needs replacing. But it's also not easy where we live because there's no Tesla shops anywhere.
We have to drive 2.5 hours to get to our Tesla shop. But I don't think so far. It doesn't sound like it's a huge issue. I know they have had to replace some of the heat pumps, but it's -40. I don't know. I don't know if there's a backup resistance heater for when it gets that cold, but maybe that's the problem.
There's got to be. Otherwise, it's not going to heat your cabin. There's got to be both. Like in the Leafs, if I bought the model, like the trim level up, I would have had a resistance and a heat pump, and the resistance will work in conjunction. So when it's this cold, the heat pump doesn't do anything, and the resistance does all the work. But I tell you, Brian, I love it. We get into it, and it is very warm. It's just, it's toasty warm, it's toasty fast, and you drive around in it, and it just feels wonderful in the wintertime, even in the cold weather.
I have to keep switching gas stations where I fill up the air in my tires because it's always when it gets this cold that your tires need more air. And I used to go to the Shell station, and then I like the pumps that have the gauge on it, so you know exactly when you're pumping it.
But they cost money.
And they're all breaking. Like I used to go to the Shell and it broke, and so I went to the Petro-Canada and then it broke, and then I had to go to a different Petro-Canada. It's crazy.
My car will blink its flashers when it's done. I think it honks too, but it didn't honk. It blinked its flashers, so that's when I stopped. But I've been doing it at home in the driveway yesterday, and I noticed it did that around, in the 30s of pounds of pressure. Anyway, to my surprise, somebody said there was a Hyundai Ioniq 5 in our little city here. We're not the city that gets EVs. Usually they go to our west coast, like California would in the States, and nobody else gets them, or Quebec. So we have one, and sitting there. I went and looked at it on New Year's night because no one was around, and it was beautiful. It's my favorite car. It's $10,000 Canadian less than the Y, so you can't say it's really the same. It's quite a bit less, although it's still a very expensive car. And it is, the thing about it, I wanted to see it because the pictures all make it look like a hatchback. And all the reviewers say, no, it's not. It looks like a hatchback in the pictures. Trust me, it's not. Had to go see it for myself. And it looked, the interior I love it. I love it. It's premium. It's like, borderline premium. They say the reviews say it's borderline luxury.
It's like Snoopy's doghouse in there. It's just bigger than it looks.
Yeah, there's a lot of thing going on. And that's without the fridge that's optional at the back, which I really want.
Right, yeah.
Actually, I want one at the front.
So you're going to go for a test drive or anything?
Oh, hell no. No. This was what the place was closed. We were picking up a pizza, so we had an extra 5 minutes. And it looks great. It could be a test drive vehicle because I think they're sold out of them. And what was I looking for? I was looking for a Honda Clarity plug-in because I'm desperately looking for what to get. They're sold out. The website just says, sorry, sold out. It doesn't say, there might be a wait. It just says they're gone. Like what website, if you looked at a Toyota Corolla online, would it say sold out? They're not going to say sold out for the entire country, but that's what they're saying. And because it's got like 70 kilometers of range or more than that. So I think it qualifies for the full $5,000 off. My friend, I've got a card-carrying conservative friend named Marty who is going to buy a BMW i4 M50, he says on Twitter. And it's got an 85 kilowatt battery. There's a lot I don't know about it. I don't think they've released the... I don't want Marty to have a hard time. He's a real estate agent, so he does a lot of driving in town. He wants a luxury car. He loves the performance German-built cars, full-size cars. So this is a perfect electric option for him. He doesn't care for the Tesla styling, and I understand where he's coming from there. He's got his own perspective. Was born in Europe, and he likes that styling, and I can see his point of view quite easily. However, I'm not sure how much range it has. I keep seeing conflicting different things, so I'm worried about it, because if he has it here and it doesn't have very much range, mind you, I think since he's a long-time realtor, he could, if he goes to the office, he could probably talk his office into getting a level 2 charger put in, I think.
It's probably adequate.
It's probably adequate, yes. But the cold weather city driving says 430 kilometers here on our website that estimates these things. And the highway cold weather is 330, which is adequate, if that's true. If it's less than that, though, because he probably drives like a madman on the highway, if I know Marty, I don't think he's going to keep it to 110, the speed limit here. So the faster you drive that car, the more range you use. But I hope if he gets it, that he's happy and he takes me for a test drive, and I'll report back on the show. So, Brian, it's time to get from terrible suspense, man. Terrible suspense. What's going on?
Well, are you sitting down?
Yes.
I'm here to officially announce my retirement.
What?
Yes.
What?
I'm going to retire.
Why? Have you been fired? Is it this podcast? What's going on?
No, I'm going to retire from everything except the podcast.
Is it the podcast that got you fired? Did they give you a forced retirement? Did you do something wrong?
No, it's all good. I'm going to step away, on my own terms. And
you can do that?
I'm very excited about it.
You can do that? It feels like you just got the job.
Yeah, it's been 12 years full-time and sort of part-time before that for many years. So, it's time, I guess. I don't know. I feel fortunate that I'm able to do it and kind of walk away before I get too... I don't want to turn into a surly old professor.
Your students are laughing right now. It's too late, buddy.
So, yeah, I don't know. This is big news. And I have a few thank yous. I want to thank my students, first of all. I've had lots of students over the years, but particularly thanks to the group that I've got now. So I'm going to teach one more semester.
Yeah, thanks, group. You made them retire. Nice work.
It starts next week. The semester starts next week, so I'll be teaching one more semester. I want to thank Elaine Payne. You know Elaine. Yes. She used to teach the animation course, and she stepped away in the early 90s. In 1994, she stepped away for a little while, and she recommended me to teach the animation class. So that was the first class that I taught was animation, and it was because of Elaine. And then when she retired, I applied for her job and got her job. Like, that's the job that I have right now that I'm retiring from. So I owe lots of thanks to Elaine Payne. And some more thanks to you and everybody who's worked on films with me over the years. It's been a great run and very, satisfying. And that film that we made, The Sabbatical, that's I think if that's the last feature film that I make, I'm happy to go out on that one. And obviously you contributed a huge amount. It's not very often that an actor cuts the trailer for the movie that he's starring in.
I defy you to find me 3.
But James did that and many, many other things on that film we made together. So, I'm just feeling kind of really fortunate and lucky and, really happy to be able to continue the podcast. So, right now, podcasting and clean energy is kind of my passion right now. So, time to say goodbye to everything else. And, this is what we're going to do.
Where are you going to do it? Are you going to move?
Not in any time soon, no. But maybe eventually.
Well, I have to the change our show description now. Instead of saying a film professor and a comedian discuss blah, 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 it's going to have to say retired film professor.
I guess so.
My former sister-in-law retired from nursing after about an 8-year career. She got divorced and decided to study nursing and then went into it for a few years and then retired over Christmas. What's going on? I've heard a lot of people that COVID is making people retire and just quit.
Well, that's certainly part of it. It's like the first 2 weeks of the semester are going to be online on Zoom. I don't love that. I mean, it's certainly not the reason that I'm retiring, but everything is just less fun in COVID. And I feel really bad for everybody who has to keep working because it's kind of like everybody's got to keep working and go to their jobs and do the unfun stuff. And we can't do any of the fun stuff. It's really bizarre and unfortunate.
I have a controversial opinion here that people are going to throw things at their podcast player. I am feeling optimistic about the pandemic.
Yeah, there's certainly some good news on the
And
horizon.
I'm a pessimist,
possibly...
Brian. I'm a pessimist. My son has a dry cough downstairs. And am I worried? I'm not the least bit worried. I'm triple vaxxed, and we've been testing them all the time with antigen tests. I apologize. I called them something wrong, the actual professional tests, but they're actually antigen quick tests at home. We have lots of supply of them, so we've been doing lots of tests. We tested me. I had a cold 2 days. My wife had a cold. It was a bit worse, but I had my triple vax longer. And my daughter had it Christmas, and my son has it now. And damn it, to be honest with you, I was hoping it was COVID. In fact, I want to send him for a PCR test because there's a lot of errors in the home ones. But even though we've done a lot of them, I'm not convinced that I would really like it to be COVID. That, it was really easy and we're done. How does a cold get around?
I drove past the drive-through testing thing, and there was an enormous lineup.
I bet
cases are taking off.
Well, either way, good or bad, Omicron is going to end this damn thing because it's so damn. Everybody's going to get it one way or another, and I'm hoping not to die from it. I'm lucky in that I'm triple vaxxed. And we got my aunt vaccinated for her first dose.
Fantastic!
That took a year. She's in her 80s. And she has pre-existing conditions, and she was worried about the side effects of blood clotting because she has issues with blood clotting, but her doctor said it was okay, but it took a long time. And my wife had a shower, and she didn't make it to the clinic on time with her aunt. And I was mad. Why'd you have that shower? You have one chance with somebody who's vaccine hesitant to get them out there. But then I kept persisting in finding places for them to go. And, they went to the library where she's very at home. She's a former librarian, and they had a line up there and couldn't get in.
No, and the therapeutic drugs that are on the way sound very promising.
Well, that's it too, and I think a lot of people don't know about them, but we have access to them here. If you got a positive test and you have pre-existing conditions like me, extreme morbid obesity, podcast assitis, I call it, and and various other things, high blood pressure, a tinge of asthma. I can't complain. It's not the worst stuff in the world, but I'm the kind of guy who dies when you get it. So I want to get that. So you can go and you get an IV right now, but there's also that pill that's coming from Pfizer, which will be very easy to distribute. I mean, they can send it, a pharmacy can just send it to your door if you're an old shut-in and you don't have to get an IV or anything. So that's promising to keep people out of the hospital.
Yeah. So we should probably get on with the show here. But
the show. Okay.
One last thing about my retirement plans. The podcast is a big part of my retirement plan. And I know that our download numbers have been increasing. The show's been really growing. And I know that, you keep the books for the podcast. So part of my retirement plan is, the podcast. So tell me, James, how much money do we make on the podcast?
Well, let's see here. How many private jets do I have? Let's see. There's no. Well, we don't make money on the podcast.
What? We don't make money on the podcast?
No, not really.
What?
I mean, every once in a while, like Bill Gates sends me money, but I have to put microchips in people and do all kinds of bad things. No. We will have advertising and crowdsourced support and things like that one day.
Well, this was my plan to live off the podcast. James, what am I going to do?
You retired and plan to live off the podcast? Are you crazy?
I've made a horrible mistake.
Oh, God. So, Brian, Hyundai, I've been critical of them, even though they make great EVs, but they don't sell very many of them. And now we have some shocking news from them.
Yeah, within a week, they put out two important press releases. Number one, that they're shutting down their combustion engine development team, just closing it.
That's amazing.
And then the other one was their hydrogen fuel cell division. They're going to shut that too. So Hyundai has seen the writing on the wall, it would seem. And, they were one of the proponents of hydrogen, and they've actually sold some hydrogen cars. And I think particularly in California, where there's a few hydrogen fueling stations. But, I don't know. Hydrogen is probably not efficient enough for all of this to work. So, Hyundai's on board, it seems.
Well, hydrogen, no matter how you look at it, is not necessary for passenger vehicles, for small passenger vehicles. It's just, it makes no sense. The only way you could argue it is for, semi-transportation, long haul trucking and things like that. And even then, a lot of people are say that's not necessary either. But it's proven that cars do just fine with batteries. I mean, the cars that are out now, that's another thing about the Mercedes. It doesn't charge very fast, so I'm concerned about that. The BMW doesn't charge very fast. It peaks at like 200, but then most of the time it's very low. And I'm worried that if he goes on the highway, it's a half hour to get from 10 to 80%, so which isn't great. It's not the 18 minutes that you get in the Hyundai.
And maybe not enough chargers around for his needs.
And right now there's not. At least between Regina and Saskatoon, but hopefully by the time he takes delivery, there will be, I hope. You know what, Brian? I was thinking, I don't want to get too far away from the Hyundai news, but you know how we live in this big prairie province that was full of farmers, and we had various co-ops. In fact, they sort of developed here, didn't they, co-ops?
Yeah, we're known for our co-ops here. I think here in Quebec in Canada are known for their co-ops.
Maybe we should have a co-op charging co-op, a nonprofit group to set up their own chargers because no one else is.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming. You always hear about, and there's government subsidies for putting in chargers. So, I think they're coming.
Anyway, this is big news from Hyundai because maybe Toyota and Honda will follow suit. But Honda, those bastards, aren't even making their plug-in hybrid available. At least Toyota's trying to at least make their plug-in hybrids available. So I'm very disappointed in some of the companies, but Hyundai is showing that when you cut off the development, and all these people, there's hundreds of them, went to work on electric vehicle development, just like that. So yeah, they're going to sell combustion vehicles, but they're not going to develop any new ones. And other people have talked about, like GM said they're going to stop developing soon, but Hyundai has just up and done it. This is a major shift.
No, those combustion engines are super complicated, and they've been, slowly perfected over 100 years. So, we don't need any more. At least, planning or development. Like we can easily get by with the ones that we already have.
All right, Brian, I want to talk about a very local story here. There was a story a few months ago where counselors on our city council here, we live in a city of, what is it, 250,000, something like that, 220,000?
Yep.
Small agricultural city in the middle of the Canadian prairies where it gets very cold. But we have oil here. We're Canada's second most popular oil province. We're next to Alberta where the oil sands are. So we have a lot of oil here. We've depended on it. It's gone well during the boom times. But our city councilors wanted to, can you explain what they wanted to do? Was it just to ban, just to say, no, we're not going to take sponsorship money from oil companies? Yeah,
that was the idea because, oil companies do sometimes sponsor local events and, they get a little bit of sort of advertising. So it's a lot like, a ban on cigarette advertising. It was going to be a ban on that, similar type of sponsorship, oil company type of advertising.
Well, one of those counselors, I think, that proposed it is a lawyer. And what happened to him? He got fired from his law firm mysteriously. And there was this pushback, all hell broke loose from this, we're just not going to take money from oil companies. I guess it's not the new tobacco yet, at least where we live. But there was this huge pushback. And what got me is the provincial government, the premier came out and said that they're going to cut off money to the city if they do this. And nobody is screaming bloody murder. But that is a horrendous thing to do. It is. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
you don't have to worry about your job anymore. So
it's terrible. How about that? But I wasn't particularly surprised because we're we're just not far enough along in our thinking here. It's
archaic.
Yeah, but we live in an archaic place. What are you going to do?
I don't know. So there's a study that CBC News has a story about. Who did the study? I can't remember. It was, one of the sort of the watchdog organizations did the study. So they announced that in over 7 days, the city councilors would be subjected to an advocacy campaign and lobbying effort on behalf of the oil and gas industry and its allies that is rarely seen at the municipal level. So it makes me mad. And so councillors heard from citizens, national industry groups such as the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, and federal conservatives such as Andrew Scheer, who was the leader of the federal opposition in Canada at the time, and local MPs, members of parliament. And the report said that it calls from industry groups like the Canadian Petroleum Association and Keystone Group of companies and organizations mobilize these fossil fuel companies and supporters with scripted emails against the motion. They all had these scripted emails that all look the same, and they were just showered upon them. According to the report, several councillors who originally supported the measure were persuaded to drop their support, and that's what happened, because residents who agreed with the city's climate goals felt the motion had become too controversial. So maybe the more adversarial climate politics that succeed in other places, they don't work here. So climate politics are still somewhat novel, the report stated. Adding, though, this may change. And you know what? We've heard from quite a few local listeners. We don't often get local listeners these days, but we've got some local listeners. So, if you're out there, keep strong, people. It's time for Brian's Movie Corner.
Brian's Movie Corner.
What have you got for us this week?
The movie this week is actually climate related. I definitely want to hear what you thought about the film. It's not technically climate related, but the film is called Don't Look Up, and it's currently streaming on Netflix, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence.
Meryl Streep and basically everybody else. A lot of people, a lot of big sluggers.
Oh, yeah. The cast is kind of insane, but the basic plot of the film is that there's an asteroid that's been discovered that's going to decimate the Earth. And then it's about these scientists who are trying to get everybody to pay attention.
Yeah, it came out. It was released in theaters, so we've heard about it for a while. It had a limited theatrical run, probably for award show, qualifications and things like that. It was released on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December. And I saw it, I think, Christmas night or something. The whole family watched it. We had a rollicking good time. Now, I read the reviews, and the reviews were tepid and mixed, and they were as if you had reviewed a movie. Good old Mr. Stockton, the retiring film prof, doesn't like anything. Well, they gave it a hard time. But I went into that knowing that it wasn't Citizen Kane. It wasn't a masterpiece. And I had a really good time. I really enjoyed it. I laughed and just went along for the ride.
Well, I really miss the old Siskel and Ebert movie review show. So I guess this is our chance to channel some of that energy. And I hated it. I just really hated it. It's like a one joke movie. And the joke is that people are awful. And that's not even a joke. That's just an observation. So, I didn't care for it at all. I mean, I appreciate what they were trying to do, and it's a noble message. The idea being is it's sort of an allegory for climate change, because scientists have been ringing the alarm bells for years, trying to get people to pay attention. So in this movie, it's a giant comet, so it's not technically climate change, but it's a very, very clear allegory for what we're going through right now. But I'd prefer to have more jokes in it.
Yeah, well, I laughed. I killed myself at the post-credit ending. I was waiting for it to happen. Meryl Streep plays a Trumpian-like president, and her son is chief of staff, and he's constantly talking about how hot his mom is. It's kind of the reverse of Trump. And she dies. Well, she sort of has a bad ending, which is funny.
So It was directed by Adam McKay, who probably most known for The Big Short, but I think his career peaked at The Big Short, and he made a bunch of comedies with Will Ferrell that are quite funny.
Anchorman.
And it was I was watching Anchorman 2 when I realized that Adam McKay was a really good director, because there's a scene in that where their motorhome flips over in slow motion. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
But it's just this gag about their motorhome getting into an accident, but they shot it in super slow-mo, and it was really great, and it made me stop and look up who the director was. This guy really knows what he's doing. Yeah. But I think he's jumped the shark, because he's a guy who tries to make comedies, but he's too concerned about the political ramifications and forgetting about the comedy.
I think he had a very loose approach to this film, and I think maybe it's because Netflix threw all their money at him, and there's no time constraint and no test audience failure pass thing. However, I thought it was effective, and my son really liked it, so much so that he showed it to his friends. But they didn't make it through more than 40 minutes because it was New Year's Eve and they wanted to party.
And it's way too long, like most movies.
But I have a clip from it. This is a clip where the scientist, the primary character in the movie, Leonardo DiCaprio, who's trying to tell the world about this impending doom and no one's listening to him, is on a TV show that he frequents during the film, and he loses his mind on this clip.
Look, let's establish once again that there is a huge comet headed towards Earth. And the reason we know that there is a comet is because we saw it. We saw it with our own eyes using a telescope. I mean, for God's sakes, we took a fucking picture of it. What other proof do we need? And if we can't all agree at the bare minimum that a giant comet the size of Mount Everest hurtling its way towards planet Earth is not a fucking good thing, then what the hell happened to us?
An allegory for climate change and science denial. I think it's effective. I give it 2 out of 4 stars.
And I give it a thumbs down.
Stay tuned for more movie reviews on the Clean Energy Show. Brian, I have some feedback this week. To be honest, I've got so much feedback that I cannot keep up. I think you're going to have to start reading the letters in your retirement when you have more time, or we're going to have to hire a staff, which is going to take away from your income. But since we have no income, it doesn't matter.
I mean, the show can be 5 hours long once I'm retired.
Sure. It could be nothing but. It could be Brian's life. Sun up to sundown, nothing but Brian. How's your back this week?
It is getting better, but yeah, I just had to shift my position again.
I'm sorry to hear that. All right. You wanted to talk about a letter we had from Eric in California.
Yeah. Eric sent us a couple of letters. There is something going on in California, and California has been pretty progressive as near as I can tell in terms of, electrification and solar power. But they're going to do, it seems, the exact same thing that they did here in our province of Saskatchewan, is that they're going to try and kill rooftop solar by changing the net metering program. So very similar thing happened here. We used to have a net metering program where you put up solar on your roof, and basically your power meter ran either forwards or backwards, and you got full credit. They cut that in half, so you only get half credit for the solar. And in California, there's a proposal, and this is apparently not final yet, but it would cut by about 80% the credit that homes receive for putting power back into the grid. So this is ridiculous, of course, in the middle of a climate emergency. In a way, I understand why they're doing it. Utilities typically, this is how they make their money. So if they're short-sighted, they're going to say, hey, wait a minute, we're supposed to be selling power, not buying it to our customers. And this is the California Public Utilities Commission. And if you live in California, I suspect you can get involved and maybe write a letter or something. But these utilities, for so long have been basically monopolies, in many places an actual monopoly, in other places a sort of a de facto monopoly. And they're not used to having to negotiate with the customers. Like, the customers traditionally have not had any power. But the reason all of these kind of plans are going to fail is because, if they don't cooperate with the homeowners, with the people who buy power from the utility, everyone's just going to go off grid. And that's what Eric is suggesting that he will do. Battery storage for homes is still kind of expensive, but we're only a couple of years away from that dropping a lot. Be still tough for us to go fully off grid where we live because the winters are so darn, cold, and the sun is at such a low angle in the sky.
I want to correct you. The temperature doesn't matter for solar. Let's correct that. Yes. We don't want to put out false information. Yes. But I get like maybe 25% in this time of year compared to others.
Yeah, so you would need an awful lot of batteries where we live. But I would think in California it'd be a fairly easy proposition to get enough batteries and just get off the grid and tell the utility to go screw themselves. So it's and Eric is not too bummed out about this, I don't think, because if they continue along this path, he'll just buy a bunch of batteries and get off the grid. But it's one of these things where it's, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. There's going to be a lot of these battles in the next couple of years, and we're going to win some of them. We're going to lose some of them. But you can't stop clean energy. It's just, there can be these regressive policies, but there's nothing you can do to stop the fact that people can get power for free from the sun.
That's right. And batteries are going to become cheaper, and you'll have to do a napkin calculation of what that's going to do for you. Now, I wouldn't say everyone should be as determined as Eric and cut his ties with the grid. But if you go out and you buy yourself a Tesla wall battery or something like that, whatever's cheapest and more accessible, then it's going to start paying for itself. If they're not going to pay you for solar, then it's better if you store it. Because, even us in Canada, we don't use all the power that the solar makes during the day at the peak, unless I'm charging my car and, running the clothes dryer or something. Then you would, but basically you want to save it and spread it out through the day, right? And night.
Yeah. And it's definitely preferable if we all stay connected to the grid, because a smart grid that shares power amongst homes, amongst provinces and states, and you can ship power across the country when you've got excess. It's better if we all stay connected to the grid. So it's a really short-sighted policy to try and stop people from putting up solar by ruining the rate paid to the grid. But that's where we are.
And batteries sort of start to pay for themselves. Depending, electricity in California is quite expensive. Ours is fairly cheap here. So they might be 3 times what we are 2 times at least retail price for electricity per kilowatt. We don't have time of day pricing where we live, but a lot of people do. So if you have time of day pricing, you figure it out on a napkin, and the life of the battery might be 10 or 15 years, and you figure it out. And does it save you money? Is it a good investment? Because if you're charging up that battery even without solar overnight, when it's 3 cents a kilowatt instead of 30 cents during supper time, you might win. You might be worth it, especially as batteries get cheaper, and they will, especially this decade. They're going to go down quite a bit once we can find enough of them.
And if it was able to be worked and the batteries were cheap enough, I would absolutely get off the grid, because I'm annoyed at how they've run this solar policy.
Yeah, screw them. And that's basically what Eric in California is saying. Got another letter here. This one is from Yours in Toronto. No, I don't know if that's his name or if he's just using text. Yours in Toronto. URS. Yours. Hi guys, love listening to your podcast. I was wondering which sources you use for the news that you are sharing. That's a good question. What sources do you like to use, Brian?
Well, there's things like Electrek and Clean Technica, and The Guardian has a great sort of energy section. But this is something I think we should try to do more of on the show, is that sometimes we don't cite the sources that we're reading the news from. So I think we should try to do better on that, because they're doing the hard work of journalism in many cases, and we're just blabbing about it on a podcast like a couple of idiots. So huge thanks to everybody, all the journalists that are doing this hard work. So yeah, those are just a few, but yeah, we'll try and mention it more frequently. And sometimes it's a story that's reported widely across many news sources, so we may not do it then. But for the more kind of specific journalism, we're going to mention the sources more often.
And a lot of times those clean energy blogs like Clean Technica and Electric are using mainstream sources, and then ultimately it's still from those mainstream sources. And sometimes they get tips, insider tips and stuff like that. Now, I will follow a lot of people on Twitter, and I really like the people I follow, get a lot of good information. That's a good way of knowing what's important and what's not when a climate scientist that you respect retweets something, or somebody who is at Bloomberg New Energy Finance saying that this battery report is important. That's how I know what's important, is those people. So yeah, I would add Bloomberg and Bloomberg New Energy Finance, NEF, to that, and The Guardian is another tip of the hat to them. Yeah,
and there's lots of people I follow on Twitter in the clean energy world. And
sorry, the wind has shifted, and I'm now breathing the refinery. The middle of the show, I think the refinery is listening to the broadcast, and they know I have a refinery about 3 kilometers away, and if the wind is from the east-southeast, which I believe it is, then good luck to me. Yeah, God, it stinks, man. I really look forward to a cleaner world, Brian. This is our fantasy. This is something we've been waiting for, and we're keeping track of that. I'm going to skip over one of our letters because we don't have much time this week, but we'll get back to it eventually. We have a Saskatchewan farmer. This is the province where we live. Another local person listening to our show. He says, I recently learned of your show. Great work. We also had a 2013 Nissan Leaf for a couple of years before buying our first new car ever, the 2019 Kona EV, and then we bought a used 2017 Chevy Bolt. Too. God, seems like a sensible thing to do. We are in the process of converting a 1980 Dodge half-ton to EV as a learning project for my son and I to use around the farm. That's an interesting project if it's not too hard. I'm not mechanical in that way, but that would be great. 1980. That is going to look cool, blasting through town with all of his torque and no noise. I look forward to seeing pictures and video of that. Anyway, we have been activists in Saskatchewan for 15 years now, though more focused recently. Attached is our annual family activist letter, hoping to help nudge the public to accelerate the transition to sustainability. We send out about 300 of these annually, and we have been trying to reach out to our friends and family in any way we can, though we are usually dismissed by them as radicals. In our transition, our only regrets were 2 things: buying Realm Energy wind turbines in 2008, and then being once bitten, twice shy, installing a PV system that was too small in 2017. I wonder if that means they were trying to be off the grid and couldn't. Otherwise, yeah, that would be a problem. Mm-hmm. So despite that, we have been really happy with the switch to clean tech, and I went to the COP26 conference in November as part of the National Farmers Union delegation. In total, I had about 20 interviews on the subject, and I also became emotional in one interview I did related to COP26. And here is a clip from that.
And I'm exhausted after 15 years of trying my best to inspire people to change, but we need government action and government policy to make those changes.
Ecological grief is a really growing phenomenon and a terminology that's really summarizing people's emotional responses that they have to losses in the environment, to changes in places that they really love, and to all the attendant emotions that come with that: the fear, the anxiety, the sadness, the stress. What has happened?
Okay, so I just wanted to play a little bit of that. There's actually a psychologist talking about ecological grief, which is something that we started to actually hear about and think about. Then the pandemic hit, and we had pandemic grief and pandemic anxiety. And so that's it's something to keep in mind. I a person starting their 15 years from today is going to have a different experience than somebody starting their cause 15 years ago. You know, I think things are getting better. It's a glacial-like move of a shift of the, but you know, things happen. Then suddenly, last couple of years of things, you know, the public I think they've seen terrible things happening, such as, you know, breaking heat records, then town burns down. It's just, you can't ignore things like that. You can't ignore the California wildfires. And everything else that's going on that's so freaky. The tornado warnings in Minnesota in mid-December, things we talked about last week. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks, Glenn from Saskatchewan, and we'll be talking to you, I'm sure, in the future. So stay in touch, and good luck with your advocacy on the clean energy front. We'd like to hear from you. Contact us at the Clean Energy Show. That's cleanenergyshow@gmail.com for email. We're on TikTok and Twitter. Our handle is Clean Energy Pod. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features. Leave us a voicemail on speakpipe.com/Clean Energy Show. And coming up, we have the lightning round, where we'll be talking about the cleaning up the headlines for this week. Brian, I have another edition of aviation news.
Is the news that we bought our own electric private jet for the podcast?
No, I'm still shopping for a good deal. But you can help me look now that you're retired. When you start retiring in the spring, we can start that. But, you know, we have a story that I'm really kind of think is cool, because a YouTuber that I love called Wendover Productions, it's a channel with researchers and a group of people doing this. My son was watching it for years, and it is, I swear, made him smarter. I swear to God. He's just not much he doesn't know, this kid. He's annoying. You cannot take him to parties.
He shouldn't even bother with university.
Stupid.
Just watch it.
Yeah, don't say that. We don't want any engineers building bridges without actual education, so that would be bad.
You know, that happened in Victoria, because I know that because I read the Victoria newspaper. There's a building that they had to evacuate everybody because they realized the engineer didn't have the proper qualifications to build. It was like a 10 or 12 story building, and he bluffed his way through the qualifications.
I was just watching an advertisement with Dr. Ho's pain and muscle treatment, where they electrocute you. And I said to my son, I bet he's not a medical doctor. I bet he's a chiropractor. Sure enough, he was. And he wore medical, like surgical garb, like, you know, like a chiropractor would wear that. Anyway, my son says that some people are leaving in third year to get jobs because they're getting good paying jobs. Not as good paying as people who finish, but you know, I want them to finish, obviously. So this channel was looking at the case for a small passenger airline to electrify its planes. And that's something that's exciting because the first planes, remember, will be small and go short distances. So this is one clip.
For the first time ever, a strong hypothesis of a business case has developed, and if it works, we will see the most dramatic shift in how commercial aircraft work in generations.
So this is Cape Air. It's operating out of Boston, and it is serving an underserved community called Rockland. And they receive an actual $2 million subsidy from the government to do this every year. And yet, they only turn $1 profit per passenger, and that's like $14,000 profit per year, even subsidized. And they spend about $850,000 a year in fuel. And yes, the plane costs, they're not out yet, but they've pre-ordered some, and they will probably, we don't know, but they'll probably be double the cost of the planes they're using now at first anyway. But the maintenance will be significantly cheaper, probably a fraction. They'll have 40% reduced operating costs overall. And they can make their own solar. Because remember, if you are an airline, you can't buy an oil well very easily, but you can set up your own solar or wind farm or both quite easily and feed your own electricity and control the price. So that's great. And also just prove that it's completely green. So this is the first commercial customer to order the Alice. That's the 9-passenger plane from aviation, capable of flying all of the airline's routes round trip without a charge. And it may become cheaper in the future to fly such routes that are 200 miles or so. Just like it's cheap to go 2,000 miles a day, it might be cheaper to go shorter hop routes. One day, people could be hopping around the country. So as regulations come down hard on air transport due to CO2 emissions, electric is going to benefit even more. And man, the outlook for the case study for this particular company is amazing.
That would take $1.09 in per passenger profit and turn it into $100.62. A number so dramatically different that it doesn't even sound correct. This would immediately turn Cape Air into the highest operating margin airline in the world, full stop. This is why the future of short-haul flying is inevitably electric.
Yeah, you can't deny that. When you turn $1 profit into $100, you think that's not going to happen? Because if you don't do it, the next guy will.
So the $1 profit, that's on the current,
That's the current business model. They switched to electric, even though the planes are more expensive, and they're looking at $100 per passenger. And that would make them the most profitable, highest profit margin airline there is. Airlines are basically operating as a loss. And making money off of air miles. That's a whole nother story. But yes, this is how air travel, it's not going to sit there and be stagnant. This is economics. This is what is moving the green transition economics.
And it can't be stopped.
Free enterprise. It can't be stopped. It's time for the lightning round. Baby, this is where we clean up the headlines and get through everything that we missed this week very briefly. We're out of time, Brian. Out of time, I tell you. Tesla has peaked its market capitalization at over $1.18 trillion based off of gains made after reporting record deliveries. Is this why you're retiring?
Well, it's certainly a part of it, yeah.
It helps.
It's good timing because the stock went up 13.5% just today, which is
oh my God.
ridiculous. But yeah, they reported that these incredible blowout fourth quarter delivery numbers of 308,000 cars delivered. And even the optimists, like the Tesla fans, the most credible estimate was going to be about 300,000, and they beat even that. And, the Wall Street estimate's much lower than that. So,
and demand is beyond that because you got to wait in a year for some of them.
It's months and months or a year. It is absolutely crazy.
Only 3% of their sales, I think, were like S and X, though. What do you make of that? Aside from, they've been revived.
They haven't fully ramped up production of the S and X, but it's very much a volume company now. S and X used to be the bread and butter of the company because they were, kind of expensive cars that they made good profit on. But they've figured out how to make the 3 and the Y at a mass scale. Nobody else so far is really producing EVs at scale. Tesla are the only ones, and as a result, they're kind of owning the market.
I have a sore throat, not from COVID, but because there's an east wind at 26. I just had to look at the weather because my throat is getting sore. I opened the bloody window and let in the sun because my sun is being heated by solar. And what happens? I get the freaking whiff of the refinery. I can't wait for oil and gas to take a hike. So long. Along with your career. It's a notable career. Are you sure you're not going to buy a yacht or anything?
Oh, sure. Yacht, plane, all that stuff, sure.
Well, Tesla's deliveries in 2021 were so crazy, they made a delivery every 33.69 seconds. And that is an 88% growth year on year. And speaking of growth, Brian, Norway new car sales, they are the leader in the world as far as the people who have plug-in and all-electric vehicle sales because of their disincentives and incentives. Well, it turned out the year ended with 65% pure electric. That's just a battery and nothing else. 22% plug-in hybrid. That's the one that has a small motor that can run in EV mode for 40 to 70 kilometers. And you add that up, that's 87% had a plug. And, there's even 6% hybrids in there too, which is not bad. And 4% diesel, 4% petrol. The rest, and there was only one petrol car on the list, the hybrid RAV4. It was the only one that made the top 10 that had an internal combustion engine. So most of the top 10 cars were all electric, like just battery electric. So that's fantastic.
No, this is amazing. They're the leaders, and the rest of us will follow.
I always enjoyed looking at Norway go up. We can't do that anymore. There's nowhere to go. It's been tickling 100%. So a leaked Ford dealer playbook reveals that the Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck, the number one selling vehicle in North America, is now being electrified in the Lightning, and its deliveries are being delayed to summer 2022. China has cut its EV subsidies by 30% and set to end them by the end of 2022. I hope that works out.
Yes, and that's part of why the Tesla deliveries, I think, were so huge this year. They were trying to get a lot of deliveries in China before the subsidy goes away.
6.5 million electric vehicles sold worldwide in 2021. That is up 109%. That has gone from 3.1 million to 6.5. And I remember for many years, we watched it double to 0.5% to 1%. And it took somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to do that. And now this has happened in 1 year. And this is the pandemic year. This is when people are buying a lot less cars. But the ones they did, we don't know the real meaning of that because combustion sales are way down and electric vehicles are way up. But would they be up even higher if it wasn't for the pandemic? Or is that somehow helping? Paraguay disconnects its last fossil fuel electricity generator from the grid. And now it truly produces 100% clean, renewable electricity.
Fantastic.
Mercedes-Benz dealers joined Ford by adding a $50,000 market adjustment, quote unquote, to its Mercedes EQS all-electric car pricing. Boo! I hate that.
Yeah, so one of the problems because there's not enough supply of these electric vehicles that everybody wants, the dealers are cranking up the prices.
And dealers are evil. We don't like dealers.
Yeah, No, I've never enjoyed my time at a car dealership.
Okay, there's 3 less nuclear reactors in the world as of last Friday. Germany pulled the plug on 3 of its last 6 nuclear plants.
Yeah, although I am surprised that they're shutting down 3 of these. If the goal is less carbon, it might make sense to keep them running. But,
I don't know. I don't have the information on how old they are and what the uptake is. They're not shutting it down. But the news is that they're not replacing them. So Tesla accounts for 58% of the DC fast charger ports in the United States. Do you think that will change as more other companies come online, or are they going to stay there?
No, it'll change, and that definitely will drop, and it goes to what we were talking about earlier. There's plans for many, many, many fast chargers to be deployed in Canada, in the U.S., really everywhere in the next couple of years. So, they're going to be super plentiful and they won't all be Tesla, that's for sure.
There's a study that shows that shipping hydrogen is vastly more expensive per unit of energy than natural gas. People say, well, you can use the natural gas pipelines to ship hydrogen. Well, it's not that easy. There's compression and other things involved. And there's no indication that anyone is actually interested in paying this excess money. So it will be outcompeted by high voltage DC, which is like a pipeline, but for electricity. So you take the hydrogen where it is, you turn it into electricity, and you ship it via a wire.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Although it's not cheap and not easy because you got to buy land and get approvals for that, even though it's high above the land. A 200 megawatt solar farm will be built on a former coal mine in eastern Kentucky. It will be the largest solar project in Kentucky and will provide employment opportunities for former coal workers, which is great to see, Brian.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, that's our time for this week. I'm really glad you joined us. We enjoy talking about this stuff, and Brian's going to apparently have even more time to do so. Maybe we'll have a daily show one day for your retirement. Just get so bored. It's not like you fish or anything. You don't have any hobbies.
No, I've slowly gotten rid of all my hobbies too. It's so it's
no time for that.
I don't know. 8 hours of podcasting a day is what we're looking for, I guess.
Well, consider rating us on Spotify and iTunes and wherever you get this podcast. And Brian, you have a song for us this week to say goodbye.
Yeah, just to say thanks to James and to all my students and everyone who's helped me on my films over the years. I thought it'd be nice to go out on a song. So the song's called It's Time, which seems appropriate. And it was written by Lisa Marr and performed by Library Voices. And this was written especially for the movie that James and I did. And yeah, that's it. It's time.
For your birthday, we got you the sun.